My name is Jovan Kurbalija. I am a director of DiploFoundation, and it's my great honor and pleasure to our annual webinar, which has become some sort of tradition in the field of internet governance. Our modus operandi is that I will, for time being, monopolize the microphone and I will speak, and you can pose your question and comments in the chat window, which is on the right-hand side of the display of the WebEx platform display. I'm based in Geneva, and this is broadcasted from our office in Rue de Lausanne in Geneva. And this is our we run monthly webinars on internet governance. We also run capacity building programs, training, and courses, including MA in internet governance. Our main theme today is internet governance in 2013. We will do some sort of crystal ball exercise and try to see over the next 20 minutes of my presentation and followed by discussion if the weather of in internet governance field will be cloudy with sunny spells and windy at times. Our plan for today is to start with some reflections on possibility and the limits for predictions. What can we predict? And then we will go through three main aspects of internet governance. We call it rational internet governance, what rationally we can discuss about the optimal internet governance policy, emotional internet governance, which is extremely important, and we shouldn't underestimate emotions in any political process and policy making. And at the end, we will finish with procedural internet governance and summary of main developments in 2003, what we should follow during this year, and what are likely to be the main developments which will shape this process. Now, I will quote a highly controversial person here, Donald Rumsfeld, former Secretary of Defense of the United States during the Iraq War, who made quite a well-known quote about predictions, among other things, and he said that there are known knowns. There are things we know, and in IG there are quite a few of those. There are also things that we know that we don't know, and there are, lastly, as Ramsel said, also unknowns, the ones we don't know, and this famous quote was followed by long discussions on the black swan and the whole idea that we have limited possibility to predict what will happen in such a complex system as human society and human economy is. Now, I added another line to the famous Rumsfeld quote, which I think is extremely important for internet governance, and you will see in a few minutes why it is highly relevant. There are also things we think we know, but we do not know. And I will ask you to join me with a quick test. I will, please don't use the Google Maps or any other tool. Just try to draw mentally a vertical line straight from Caracas, capital of Venezuela, towards north along the meridian, and try to guess what is the city you will find on this line. Los Angeles, New Orleans, or Boston. Please type your answer in the chat window. Let us see what are the perception, our geographical perceptions. Go ahead. I hope I can open that. Well, I think there are some of the colleagues from Diplo whom I already asked this question. I'm sorry, Richard. I'll try to, our colleague from Belgrade office will try to see what can be done with the voice. Okay, Siranushit is one of the reasons why you choose LA. What about others? So far we have New Orleans, Boston, and LA. Therefore, the city which is on the same meridian as Caracas is. Please do not consult Google Maps. Richard indicated that he has some problems with the voice. What about others? Can you hear me well? Thank you. Tom also. Okay, so far we have 3 answers, and it seems that we will close this short exercise at this point. The correct answer is Boston, and most people, including myself, when I was first asked this question, answered New Orleans or LA. And the reason is that we are mentally mapping Latin America close to the California or to some point to the New Orleans. The question was, and I will suggest a few readings on this point. One is Inevitable Illusions. The book contains, it starts with this question, and it contains the typical illusions when we think that we know something very well, like this basic geography, but we are making mistakes. And we have quite a few illusions. Well, some of them are avoidable, some of them are inevitable in the field of internet governance. And you will see throughout our presentation why, what are those illusions and how we can overcome them. They're important for our discussion on the policy making in the 2013. Now, there are 3 basically ways to understand internet governance in 2013. One is the rational internet governance, emotional, and procedural. We will go step by step through these 3 types of perception of internet governance. The first is rational, and here is what we do while we are studying internet governance, trying basically to understand what are political, economic, and social interests of the major actors, mainly governments, but also non-state actors, including business sector and the other players. And that's what is taught on most of the international relations courses, internet governance courses. And here is the summary, for example, what one can envisage as a possible interest of the main players. The list can be long, but here we outline 3 important players. United States, and rationally, interest is to preserve position of Silicon Valley in the global internet economy, and to use the internet as a US soft power instrument. A lot of books have been written about that, about concept of soft power and the use of the internet by the United States in this area. For China, one of the main objectives is to preserve social and political stability on national level and to use the internet to maintain economic growth. And as you can see here, there could be quite a few contradictions and in the way of putting these objectives. For the EU, definitely, after the new strategy, use of the internet is one of the main tools for economic recovery. And the EU, through the discussion on data protection and privacy, is putting a lot of emphasis on the question of adjusting the internet to the EU's social and legal system. One can continue with other countries, and what we tried here, this is a simplification, I hope not oversimplification, is to position different actors according to their rational interest on this arch, having on the left-hand side promoters of status quo, preserving the current internet governance system, mainly described as a multi-stakeholder. And as you can see here, we have United States, business community, and on the other side, we have so-called change camps, mainly intergovernmental, arguing that internet, like any other global policy issue, should be managed on through intergovernmental organizations, conclusion of treaty, etc., etc. And the last year, 2012, was concluded with a sharp division between these 2 camps. Now, European Union, although it sided with the United States business community and other players in Dubai, opposing the changes of ITR, in other fields is moving closer to the central area, which we call zone of possible agreement, where also civil society is moving gradually. And we will discuss today, and you can start thinking about building blocks for this zone of possible agreement. On the right-hand side, we have a player like South Africa, which is close to the change scenario, India with different proposals, sending sometimes conflicting signals. Brazil trying to position itself, G77 still floating and trying to find its position. Now, as you can imagine, this could be a good basis for discussion, and there are different arches. One arch for the Dubai would look completely different, with the G77 strongly on one side and the European Union strongly on the other side, for example. But when you come to the question of ICANN and the GAC and the sort of supervision of the ICANN, you can see European Union closer to the zone of possible agreement and siding with the players from the right-hand side and on many issues. It is a good thing that there is variable geometry of internet governance, because it provides more opportunities for the global compromise, which can ensure the maintenance of the unified internet. But we'll discuss it later on in more details. Now, besides, as a part of rational internet governance, we have to be aware of the high stake for all players in this field. Internet governance is becoming part of the Premier League of the global governance, and there are many reasons. And one is quite obvious, which was sort of presented in more scientific way by a Boston Consultancy Group recent study, when they asked people in United States, China, Germany, and Brazil to put their preferences between internet, fast food, satellite, chocolate, coffee, alcohol, exercise, sex, car, and shower. And you can see that almost more than 60% in all countries would choose internet if they have to choose between fast food and chocolate. I'm not among them. I won't give up chocolate easily, or coffee. And the highest dependence is in China, with the Chinese 40% of those who answered this survey preparing internet, for example, to sex, or 60% to use of the car. Therefore, this study shows clearly that we are increasingly dependent on the internet, and political elites all over the world will have to handle it with care. This is part of the rational internet governance, and rationally speaking, all major actors have an interest in preserving united internet. Internet we have today, where we can access any resource globally. But when we move to the emotional side, we get completely different picture. And we got what we had in 2012 in the preparation for the Dubai meeting. Emotions, and I have to put important caveat, emotions are important, and I'm not arguing here against emotions. The emotions are extremely important in political life. They shape our motivation, they shape our life, and we have to be aware of them, and we have to calculate them in our internet governance debate. Now, I just gave a few examples of emotions, especially emotions, how they played important role in preparing for Dubai. In the United States, there is a question of historical ownership. Internet was predominantly invented in the United States, and there is some sort of strong feeling, for example, in the Congress, towards preserving important role of the United States in this field. And this is legitimate emotion, which you can find in many arguments and discussions, particularly in the Congress. There is also general suspicion of government involvement in public affairs. When we discuss China, and in China there is a strong interest to preserve social stability. Sometimes it can be misused as argument for whatever ends, but any reader of the history of China is aware of the deep historical fear of social instability which China experienced at the end of the 19th and beginning of 20th century, especially during the Opium War and the establishment of modern China. Therefore, there is a strong concern in China about anything that can endanger social stability. Nowadays, especially over the 4 or 5 years, decision makers in Europe, especially in Brussels, are increasingly concerned and reserved towards self-governance. And the reason is the financial crisis. There are quite a few strong views that financial crisis was triggered, among other things, by the fact that banking and financial sector was self-regulated and self-governed. Now we can continue with this list with Germany and fear of inflation, and with Arab countries and African, Latin American countries. It is extremely important that we keep that emotional aspect in our consideration, and we need more empathy in internet politics. And more empathy means that we should try to step in the shoes of the others and understand motivation of others when it comes to internet discussion. Now we discuss rational internet governance. Mentioned quickly what is the main position. Emotional, what paints the position of the main actors, particularly what was strongly highlighted in the preparation for Dubai. This is emotional internet governance. And lastly, we have procedural internet governance. Rational and emotional internet governance are setting the stage for the procedural internet governance, and here we will discuss main IG developments and events in 2013. Keep in mind that in all of those events, like in Dubai, there will be interplay between rational and emotional. Use of the rational arguments for emotional ends, use of emotions for the achieving the rational ends. Now, the first, we will list 7 main developments, which we think will mark this year. This is now crystal ball exercise, and I'm always a bit uneasy to as the famous saying goes, to make predictions, especially about the future. But let us try to do it, and we can revisit later on during the year. The first development is global IG architecture, characterized by post-Dubai developments and gradual preparations for the versus plus 10 in 2015. And here we have a question of signatures ratification of the ITR. Are we going to have a new country signing it or joining, accessing to ITR? Question of ratification. Formalized preparation for the versus plus 10, which will start in February in Paris, and which will probably mark the developments over the next 2 years as a broader context for facing internet governance discussion. With the major issue, if internet governance, according to the Tunis compromise, will remain separated from the other versus issues, or it will come under the broader versus umbrella. Therefore, we will be revisiting versus compromise achieved in 2005 with the establishment of Internet Governance Forum. In May, there will be IT World Telecommunication Policy Forum in Geneva, another follow-up, informal follow-up to Dubai discussion. And of course, the UN Commission of Sustainable Development Working Group on Science and Development Working Group on Enhanced Cooperation, which will have its first meeting in June 2013. I won't go into details. We can discuss this later on. You can prepare the questions about all these processes. And then there will be UN General Assembly in autumn 2013, 68th General Assembly, which is likely to bring in the view of the enhanced cooperation discussion, cybersecurity discussion, which is going on in the first committee, some sort of more lively and political discussion on internet governance. And we have our Internet Governance Forum, which will meet in Bali in November 2013. Again, there are many open issues about the future of the Internet Governance Forum. An important player, possible player for reaching this arrangement in the zone of possible agreement, global compromise on internet governance. The second main development which we can expect, mainly due to financial crisis, is what is called fiscalization of the internet. You are aware of the French government proposal to introduce special tax to the major internet companies, and they prepared quite a comprehensive report. And apart from the political motivation to introduce new tax and to have more money in the coffers of the French government, there is quite in-depth discussion about the reasoning and some conceptual dilemmas about the business model and the limits of the business model and how to prove that, as famous saying is going, debt and taxes are the only thing that we cannot avoid. How to ensure that the there is taxation on the internet. Therefore, it will be the main process driven by quite concrete interest to reduce income from other sources in financial crisis. The third development will be ICANN and new domain. Most of you are aware of the developments, introduction of the new domain. Last year we called the ICANN and the soul searching, and we can say, as you will see in our summary of developments of 2012, that ICANN successfully completed this initial phase of soul searching phase. As you know, they appointed extremely competent CEO, and he has been doing a lot of good outreach and disseminating good vibration in the Internet governance community. I will strongly recommend to follow his speech, not official speech, but speech to civil society group, which he delivered in Toronto during the ICANN meeting. It is one of the, I would say, historical speeches in the field of Internet governance. You will receive the link in the follow-up to this session. But ICANN this year will have some difficult time. The ICANN is much more prepared than it was in 2011 to deal with these issues with the new leadership, and this will be one of the decisive developments in the field of Internet governance. Intellectual property is an old issue that has been around for quite some time, and with SOPA, ACTA, Mega Upload, and other developments in 2012, it is very likely that this will continue further, probably in some sort of interplay with question of taxes on the internet, for example. Therefore, it is on the fourth position on our estimate. Then we have a cybersecurity code of conduct and possible convention of the International Convention of Cybersecurity, proposal by Russia, China, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan in the General Assembly, in the first committee. The expert group had a meeting earlier this week in Geneva discussing the proposal and how to move forward. And of course, a high relevance of cybersecurity for the United States and President Obama's international cyber security strategy. The sixth issue, which is another like intellectual property, one of the underlying issues for a long time, is the question of human rights and the internet, with the Swedish proposal and adoption and special session during the February 2012 meeting of the UN Human Rights Council. It has moved now to General Assembly, and we are likely to envisage more global political discussion on the internet and human rights. One of the issues which is on the seventh position of our list, and I personally, being based in Geneva and seeing the confusion that exists between different international organizations and players when it comes to internet governance, there will be stronger pressure on international level and national level to overcome policy silos and to achieve better policy coherence. Because we can see that the same issues from different angles have been discussing in the WTO, WIPO, Internet Governance Forum, ITO, and other players. For countries, and some countries like Canada, already appointed Internet governance diplomats in Geneva. Will put additional efforts, especially in Geneva, to connect dots between different internet governance policy processes. Now, as we started, I listed some sort of known knowns, and most of them are known knowns, and some known unknowns. But as we know, there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, and they may influence developments in 2013. I will just make one historical analogy, which, like all historical analogies, carry certain risk. Radio telecommunication negotiation lasted for almost 12 years before Titanic catastrophe. And one of the reasons for Titanic catastrophe that was the two systems, Telefunken and Marconi of telegraphy, couldn't function well, and Titanic SOS signal couldn't be received by, you know the historical story, triggered the process which resulted in adoption of the radio telecommunication First Convention in a few months after the Titanic catastrophe. Therefore, the crises and unknowns can speed up the process, but obviously we cannot envisage them, but we should be ready for such development. Hopefully, and I cross my fingers, not not along this historical analogy with the Titanic. Now, I would like to pass the floor to you and this virtual floor, whatever it is, and to hear your question and your views about internet governance in 2003. Can we divide this in this rational, emotional, and procedural aspect? And what do you expect personally, institutionally, people involved in IG from processes in 2013? Over to you. Let me see if there are already some questions. Okay, I'm sorry, there are some bandwidth issues here, and Ginger is asking if IG diplomacy elements applicable to general diplomacy. Yes, they are, and well, I didn't invent something new. There is a famous Aristotelian basis of rhetoric where he uses logic, ratio, emotions, and that's the sort of all exercise. The only problem is that in internet governance, and I would say more strongly from technical community, there is, I would say, algorithm-based diplomacy. You have a problem, you can rationally map the problem, and you can find the rational solutions, which is fine, and I'm strongly for the rational approach to things. But sometimes it can underestimate emotional aspects, and it can backfire by relying only on the rational and logical approach. In the traditional diplomacy, there is much more balanced approach between emotional and rational. Ginger, with will I can be an emotional or rational issue? Well, let me just answer by pointing to a few issues. United States, if in a very rational analysis, almost this algorithm-style analysis, one could argue that United States would be the strongest supporter of international convention on the internet. Let me provide some arguments for that. This is now the speculation, because the United States has now dominant position. According to the latest study by CIA, almost 90% of the internet industry is somehow linked to the United States. In the classical political economy, this is the moment when the dominant player is trying to codify and to secure its position by arguing for status quo. Now we can see if the status quo means to preserve the current level of the internet governance, or legalizing internationally current status quo through some sort of international convention on the internet. Now, on the side of the ITU, and I'm now speaking about the ITU Secretariat, there is a question of survival of organizations. Once any organization is established, and ITU has the longest history, it tends to survive. And for ITU Secretariat, I'm not discussing here the political interest, there is the important issue and the fight for survival. And sometimes we underestimate quite a few good things that have been coming from that drive in the ITU, like one of the most successful e-participation projects among international organizations, far ahead of all other players. Therefore, yes, emotions are important on all sides in this game, and I try to give a few illustrations when it comes to the United States and when it comes to the ITU. Let me see. Tom, which is the best way to get ready for the unknowns? Well, I think a few things. First, I will give the following recipes. First, we should avoid making grand projects and being too enthusiastic about our possibility to plan. We should be very practical. We should also introduce adaptability mechanisms where adaptation for unknowns can kick in. Reliability of the systems of national, local level. Those are three advices how to deal with the unknowns. Stephanie looking back at the wiki, I think government will take a more active and visible. Definitely, and the reason were explained earlier during our discussion. One of the reasons is the high importance of the internet governance, political, economic, and social. This development has potential bad and good development consequences. Adela, I have a question regarding the position on the arch earlier. Why civil society placed as moving away from the current multi-stakeholder model? Good point, Adela, and thank you for raising this issue. In this field, part of the civil society, while they are strongly for the multi-stakeholder model, and then zone of possible agreement, I will just return to that zone. Sorry. Will most likely combine elements of multi-stakeholder model, which is the core model adopted by internet governance community and proven, but also addressing some issues related to the public policy. And this is, for example, where European Union is keen also to move to zone of possible agreement. There are issues that have to have an important role of governments and codified in international conventions, treaties, and other rules. So this is that sort of alchemistry, IG alchemistry, which we will have to exercise in order to create this zone of possible agreement if we want to preserve unified internet. And this is, I would say, the highest goal that we should aim at. Quite definitely, yes. Unknown must trigger a crisis before the international community is pushed into action. You know, the famous saying of the advisor, Barack Obama, do not raise the crisis, and crises are usually the way to create dynamism in policy field. Adela, look at India, Brazil, why civil society or part of it moving away from the multi-stakeholder model. Well, I already answered, I don't think that civil society, even those who are more towards intergovernmental side, and you who follow the discussion in the governance list and knows the various players are keen to preserve multi-stakeholder model. And I think zone of possible agreement includes multi-stakeholder model. Jason, what is the result of the ITU Dubai? Who is doing what? Well, as you know, ITU Dubai finished with the lack of consensus, and it was a warning sign to all of us that if there is no additional attempt to understand all sides in the negotiation, there is a risk for disintegration of the internet. Fortunately, ITU Dubai won't trigger the disintegration of the internet. It will. Some countries signed the new international telecommunication regulation. Some didn't sign, and you will use the old one. But I think it won't significantly in this way impact the unifying aspect of the internet. Perhaps civil society is beginning to feel that it's not really being let in as a stakeholder. Well, the dynamism, which is obvious, this was clear in Dubai, is that governments are trying to make a stronger move into the field of internet governance. Civil society, and this is the reason why I strongly suggest Fadi's speech in Toronto should push for what he called responsible multi-stakeholderism. It is not enough just to repeat the mantras of multi-stakeholderism. We have to move and to make it more responsible, more transparent, more clearer, with a clear indication of the role of different players. Because as all of us are aware, multi-stakeholderism is a great model towards inclusive global policy, but there are risks that it could be misused by the most active players. And therefore, this sort of point, responsible multi-stakeholderism, is probably a way out. Larissa, I'm sorry, Larissa, I'm trying to scroll it back. You asked, could you repeat your question instead of just, it's probably easier for you to copy and paste. My apology for missing it. Larissa, there is then a question of digital diplomacy, but here we have to be clear about important distinctions. When we say IG diplomacy, it is internet as a topic on diplomatic agendas. And there is a question of digital diplomacy, use of the IG tools, internet tools for diplomacy. Yes, the answer is that development of internet will increase importance of digital diplomacy. There were quite a few examples in 2012. I haven't listed them. One is a SOPA, the other is ACTA, where the civil society and other players manage to make basically diplomatic action by using the internet. And we have some sort of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in garage where few people can launch international action and make concrete impacts, as it was the case, for example, with SOPA and ACTA. Larissa, let me know if you are satisfied with the answer. Thank you. Narine, thank you so much for the presentation. My question is, to what extent politics will influence impact IG development in 2013? Narine, I think it will influence to a large extent for two reasons. First reason is the higher stake, higher importance of IG. Therefore, it is not just some issue that could be dealt by few of us who used to gather on IGFs and ICANN meetings, some geeks, academics. It is an important issue for society. Second reason is that IG is moving through policy elevators on the national level from the ministries of telecommunication, non-state actors, more and more closer to the highest authorities in the countries. You have in many countries prime ministers, president's office on ICT. In the United States, State departments, especially with Hillary Clinton, got more say into internet governance, internet politics issues over the last 4 years. We had the London conference, the Budapest conference. Therefore, more and more diplomats, high-level politicians are getting involved in the politics of internet governance. Well, it will bring good and bad developments. Good is high relevance; they are aware of the importance. But the risk is that it can be politicized, and once it is politicized, IG will be just another issue for trade-offs on the diplomatic agendas, where you can have negotiation, and then you will have IG, trade, human rights, whatever else, and countries then start trading horses, and IG can become part of that context. Well, Jason asked which leaders are calling for the internationalization of ICANN. Well, except the United States and like-minded countries, it's difficult to find. Even the United States, with the latest policy, there is a intention to internationalize ICANN. But here, there is a difference about internationalization through multi-stakeholder model or through intergovernmental model. I can list definitely all of the BRICS countries and the European Union with a stronger role of a GAC secretariat. Therefore, it is quite a wide view among the countries to internationalize ICANN. Samuel, despite the huge size of this forum meeting, the IGFIQ, they still seem like old boys club with the same people in attendance. Maybe that's why it seems like this model is losing relevance. Well, Samuel, excellent point. And we intuitively made the same observation in 2012. And what we did, we conducted in order to support our intuition. We did, for example, a survey of the participation at the IGF over the last 6 years. Not only the survey of participants, but also analysis of intervention, who spoke, how often, how long, and you will receive the link in follow-up to the session. And our conclusion is, yes, this is there is some sort of usual suspects group, which is a natural. We tend to socialize around the issue, and these things, one shouldn't be extensively critical, not only because I'm among the usual suspects and most, I would say most of you, but it is natural. The real problem is that usual suspects have to make a strong effort to increase, if I can call it, footprint of Internet Governance Forum and other bodies. This is the only way how we will ensure a relevant and functional and strong, for example, Internet Governance Forum. And I'm quite proud that in Diplo we have been trying, it's one of our main missions, to make more inclusive global policy process. But Fatima, well, yes, there is that idea. I don't think that it will fly for at least two reasons. One is that inertia, once bodies, policy processes are established, they're driven by inertia. And this is what also our study of Internet Governance Forum shows. Inertia is very powerful. And if you want to change the inertia, you need to put enormous efforts. That's sort of almost the law of the physics. This is the first reason why it is not likely to be removed. Second is that it will be counter the main issues in Internet governance. Openness is the key issue. Security is the key issue. Privacy is the key issue. Therefore, I don't see really how anyone arguing will provide strong arguments against, on both rational and emotional level, against openness, security, and privacy. Clyde Hoyt, attacks on Internet governance by French government may restrict Internet usage in long run and would be a violation of Internet governance principles. Clyde, have you read the report by French government? What about others? Could you confirm if you read the report by the French government? Now, why I'm asking that? It is a very serious report. It's clear that a lot of efforts are put into this report, and it's clear that a lot of thinking was put in this report. Now, the question of taxation enters the gray zone of international law and internet politics, and I would say that you can put a strong argument behind your statement that it will restrict internet usage and it will be a violation of internet governance principles. And I tend to support this type of argument. I think they're still stronger. But don't underestimate the other arguments, and they're really gaining sort of strength. And it's a question of social responsibility, contributing to the weakest of society. And not only that on the, let's say, ethical level, social level, but also there are strong arguments on the legal level for introduction of taxation. This is the reason why we put it relatively high on the agenda, because we can expect serious debates on the question of taxation triggered by financial crisis and the reduced budgets of the many governments worldwide. I don't know. Larissa reminded me that I didn't answer her question. Is there any other question that I haven't answered? Samuel, let me make an analogy with climate change, because internet governance debate. Samuel asked, well, most of you are reading, extremely relevant question. Do we need a global deal, or we can use some sort of bottom-up process to national internet governance? Traditional mantra that internet governance community borrowed from climate change community is that you cannot have national or regional deals. You need a global deal before, in order to make it effective policy. And that approach failed in Copenhagen, if you remember, in the climate change summit. And now after Copenhagen, there was a Mexico summit, Durban, and in December this year, Doha. And I've been following it carefully. After the big failure in Copenhagen, they started rebuilding the narrative, but by exactly using bottom-up approach, trying to motivate governments to have a national initiative. They're still trying to achieve the global deal. But I think that we will see more and more in internet governance development of the national and in particular regional initiatives, because in internet governance, regional initiatives could reflect cultural differences. The question of Arab world and the famous film, anti Muhammad film, which triggered the protest. Therefore, I can see that development, and here we have one, let's say, some sort of sun that we can expect in 2013. It is the strength of national and regional internet governance forums. They're more embedded into the local issues. They have a support by the local communities. They're developed according to different architecture and geometry. In some of them, governments are strong players. In others, they're weak players. But that could be an interesting development, which I would suggest that we put on our radar. Maybe IG community will learn from the lesson of the climate change community and try to rebuild internet governance policy from the national level by escaping the big deals. Well, I think that here I'm very emotional, and we should be emotional. We shouldn't hide that. I think that there is a risk that we waste a great opportunity that Internet Governance Forum, Global Internet Governance Forum, offered for creating some sort of deal of this in the zone of possible agreement. And I would argue that for that we should blame all stakeholders, not only the usual sort of receivers of criticism, government, but all stakeholders, and that there is a still possibility, but one has to notice a relatively low political energy behind the idea to have the IGF as a space where zone of possible agreement will be created. Exactly through this link which Vlada hinted between policy shaping and decision-making process. It is possible. It is possible according to the current rules, according to the founding principles of Internet Governance Forum. But I would say there is no strong political will, and I would say it is quite evenly distributed worldwide to that lack of interest to strengthen the IGF as a space where the new compromise will be shaped and achieved. Definitely, business has its own responsibility for the future of the IGF, like all other stakeholders. And one of the reasons why a business obviously is the most active player, which can commit funding, which can pay for people for traveling, and it's the easiest way for business to promote its interest, and it's a legitimate way for business to promote its interest. But I would say that there was a lack of empathy in at least giving some sort of more helping hand to governments and civil society to create this balanced internet governance forum. And here one can blame the share of responsibility towards business, and I would say civil society and obviously governments have its shares as well. Fortunately, IGF responsibility for success or failure of the IGF is quite equally shared among the more or less all stakeholders. It seems that we don't have any other question. That's correct. This is the key question, and one of the dilemmas which I highlighted in the paper, for example, about the position of Google. Just try to put yourself in the shoes of any CEO. They have to report to their shareholders. They have to fight with the other companies. They have to fight for the market, and that's quite a tricky position. And again, one shouldn't put blame. One should try to understand the motivation. Yeah, and exactly. What I, for example, recently really appreciated, and that should be, this is one important development, is Twitter's policy to report on all requests by governments and other players to remove Twitter accounts and other things. full transparency. This is one area where, for example, business can do a lot. We cannot ask business to enact policy that could be against their interests, but through transparency, they will, as Twitter did, protect their business model and also increase multi-stakeholder nature of the global policy making. If governments, whatever governments, ask for my removal from the Twitter, and if it is publicized, this is already a lot. I can complain, I can make the action, and that's important development. Vlada's point is very relevant. If we don't reach the compromise, for example, in IGF and the deal which will be acceptable for everybody, there is a risk that governments will just move to some other space, as they've been doing and they hinted in Dubai. Yes, Samuel, let me illustrate with one example. It's important of Brussels in sort of introducing public policy issues in the global internet economy. And it is not surprising that Google, Facebook, and all other players have big offices, lobbying offices in Brussels. And I agree that there will be more and more pressure on these companies coming from EU in Brussels, but also other governments. Well, that's a good point. I think they asked, could we substitute transparency for openness? Openness is umbrella concept which was used in the IGF. We should keep it includes open internet, open data, open access. Transparency here is more important because it focuses on the processes, on the policy making processes. And I'm afraid if we don't keep the transparency as an important concept, that could be lost into the broad openness indication, which covers many issues. Well, Emila, to make IGF attractive to governments, I think we should have government participants at the national level, engage them locally before we do so at global level. Definitely, I think it's extremely important. And I can tell you my experience in working with governments is that when one explains to governments what they can gain from multi-stakeholder approach, including the simple thing that they can have free expertise from an extremely knowledgeable technical community. They can have people inside the tent, as famous saying is going, not criticizing them outside the tent. And they usually react positively. And I think that IG community, especially civil society, I would say, and technical community, could increase, if I can say, lobbying empathy and try to see what is the motivation of the government. I don't subscribe to the idea that governments officials wake up and go to sleep in the morning with only one idea, how to control and censor people. They are motivated by the motivation like all of us, to keep their job, to look good if it is possible, to do something useful. I know some people would be surprised, but to do something useful for their society. If we make just small efforts, we can achieve a lot when it comes to governance. Definitely, it is an important issue. It became, you know, there are some issues in Internet Governance Forum, and our study confirms that, which through inflation lost its importance. A word like money lose their relevance if they are inflated, overused. And I think transparency has been used a lot. But I would say that, for example, civil society can get it back on the agenda with very concrete examples like this one from the Twitter, where the transparent policy process makes substantive impact on the overall internet governance. You will have my support if you propose it as a topic for the next IGF. Good. It seems that I really monopolized the floor, and Well, that's deep. Thank you for your excellent questions. As you can see, I got very emotional on some issues. I try to be rational on the other issue, but this is how we are, and I'm really excited about developments in 2003. We have at stake what we really like. It's unified internet that empowered so many of us and should empower even more people. Therefore, there is an important issue that we have to address during 2013. You can count on Diplo support. Diplo role, as you know, is to support creating inclusive and effective policy making. We usually do not make a policy statement, but we support, and through that, we support inclusive policy making and overall survival of internet, which has served us so well. Therefore, I wish you good luck in your personal, professional, and of course, IG endeavors during 2013. Thank you, Deed, for the nice words about the presentation. You will receive follow-up email from us.